Matt Moscona joins us today. We are doing a featured SEC baseball series this weekend. It is LSU and Georgia. Matt is all over the airwaves on ESPN radio down in Louisiana, Baton Rouge, Alexandria, New Orleans. Matt, a lot going on this time of year. We got the draft tonight. We got baseball. We got spring football. How do you keep up with everything?
Hey man, and Garth Brooks is playing Tiger
Oh,
Stadium this week. It's going to be a massive deal, Chris. Like they're going to put 100,000 people in Tiger Stadium for Garth Brooks, and I don't think
goodness.
there's been 100,000 people in Tiger Stadium for an LSU game probably since maybe the 2019 Florida game. And look, everybody always leaves early, right, to try to beat traffic. Ain't nobody leaving early till he plays calling Baton Rouge in the encore. So man, traffic around
Yeah.
Baton Rouge is gonna be terrible on Saturday night. But it's a big deal around here, man.
Yeah, we did Journey and Toto last night here in Nashville. That was a lot of fun.
You
So
got more options in Nashville than we have in Baton Rouge.
this is true. This is true. Garth sold out 7 nights in a row here in Nashville in the arena, so not entirely unexpected. But let's talk baseball. What's your vibe on LSU? I think Jay Johnson's done a really good job. That was an odd hire in some ways, but I think a good hire. And I think that, what are we, 9 months, 10 months into the hire? Looks like a good one to me.
I think it's a great hire. Jay is meticulous. His
Mhm.
attention to detail is very impressive. You got to keep in mind LSU's athletic director Scott Woodward was here when Nick Saban was hired back in December of 1999, and he was sort of Mark Emmert's right hand then when Emmert was at LSU. And he is very, very ingrained into the athletic culture of this university, even when he was on the academic side. Um, Scott knows what he's looking for in head coaches, and he aims big. I mean, we've talked about he hired Brian Kelly, he hired Jimbo at A&M, he hired Chris Peterson from Boise when he was at University of Washington. So he knows what he's looking for, and a lot of people have compared Jay at this point in his career to what Nick was when LSU hired him
Hmm.
from Michigan State. The personalities are very similar. Now, I get it; it's different sports, and we're talking about literally the greatest coach in the history of college football. But I mean, what they are personality wise and where they are in their career at the time they were hired, it's very similar. And you give him time um, to build this roster back the way it needs to be built. That married to his sort of maniacal attention to detail, he could do special things here if the chips fall as they may.
I've been saying this for a while. I think they're already better than people think. The hitting we knew would be outstanding. It has been, but he's rebuilt that pitching staff pretty well. They get decent starting pitching. There's not a lot of elite starting pitching in the league right now. The hitting we knew would be ahead of the pitching, and it has been. You've had some injuries, but I feel like he's got some options coming out of the bullpen. While his starting pitching's not been great, I think it's been on par with most teams. You knew if they got a little bit of pitching, they'd be really, really tough. And I don't think that they have maybe gotten recognized as the team that I think they are this far in.
They'll have a chance, but it's interesting because Jay and the pitching coach Jason Kelly have had to overmanage darn near every pitch. A lot of opposing fans get very frustrated because Jay Johnson has worn out that path from the dugout to the mound. And it makes for very long games. It can be frustrating. Vanderbilt's going to see that here in a few weeks when LSU's Nashville. But they don't have frontline starting pitching. Mikhail Hilliard has been a tremendous surprise. Came back as a super senior. Vanderbilt fans might remember him. He had a great outing as a freshman in Nashville. When they played a doubleheader on a Sunday, and Mikhail, I think, was a tough luck loser in a 7 inning outing. But he's been around the league a long time, but they have sort of refined him to be a starter. He's pitching on Fridays now. Blake Money didn't even make the travel roster last year for the
Wow.
postseason. He's their number 2. And a freshman named Samuel Dutton is the guy who's going to game 3 right now. And really all they're asking him to do is maybe get through the lineup one time and hand it off to the next guy. So, I mean, they don't have great frontline pitching, but they have talented depth, and so they are using a lot of arms to make their way through weekends. This isn't a staff that's going to rely on 6 or 7 guys. It's going to be more like 12 or 13 guys to get through a weekend.
Yeah, and that worked just fine with Mississippi State last year. Sometimes you don't need – now, State had a couple of studs, which LSU does not have. But I look at the bullpen. Paul Gervais has been really good when he's thrown. What is that guy, like 6'10"? He's huge.
Yeah, 6'10".
Yeah.
What a story.
Right.
I mean, I think this is his 4th different college.
Oh,
and
goodness.
he's been all like at the JUCO or D3 level. But he's the guy they trust to go get him 3 outs in the 9th. It's been amazing.
Well, it feels to me like they've got a few guys they can trust. One guy that he really trusts is Riley Cooper, because if I'm not seeing things, I could have sworn I think he used him to close out, was it all 3 games last weekend?
He pitched in all 3.
Yeah.
He ended up closing game 3. But,
okay.
Cooper's interesting. He came over with Jay Johnson from Arizona, and he does not look the part, man. He has long hair, big beard.
He looks like a heavy metal roadie.
He's got a belly on him. I mean, yeah. He does not look like a fine-tuned athlete. I mean, but Jay Johnson trusts him because he's got a really competitive mentality on the mound and he throws strikes. So they've found roles for all of these guys as they've made their way through the season. And there's a lot of guys that they trust in leverage situations. So it's just kind of how they've had to piece it together, Chris. I mean, they don't have like a starter that can get them 7, a setup guy, and then a closer. It's just not how they do it. I mean, they really piecemeal the weekend together using all of these arms, and it's sort of out of necessity.
I feel like though their pieces stack up pretty well. I see SEC fans this year. And I see it in Nashville with Vanderbilt. People look at the pieces and say, well, they don't have Leiter and Rocker and all that stuff. I'm like, well, have you looked across the league? Hitting's winning the day. And if you've got 7, 8, 9 usable pieces, if you hit like LSU, that's good enough. And see, I think they've got pieces. They've got those guys. Eric Raiselman's been pretty good. Vietmeyer has been okay at times. I mean, he's got some experience. What they have is a lot of guys that they can throw in spots and kids that have pitched before, and that's something. That's especially something I think when you get to the postseason.
Yeah, I think you're right about the league, and some of that's due to injury.
Yeah.
But aside from Cannon at Georgia, who LSU's going to see this weekend, and Barco down at Florida, you don't have those dominant frontline arms, just peppering the league this year. You don't see an Aaron Nola, you don't see an Asa Lacy, you just don't see those guys around. All the guys you mentioned from Vanderbilt, which has made it more manageable for LSU in this year. Some of that's injury, right? I mean, State, Arkansas, lost their Friday night guys to injury before the season started. So it has a trickle down. They lost a Friday night guy 2-3 weeks into the season, and it just had a domino effect that they never really recovered from when they lost Jaden Hill.
Yeah.
But with LSU, what's interesting is all the guys you mentioned, really the only lefty that they've been able to count on all year has been Riley Cooper. Javen Coleman's a guy who was probably going to be a guy in the weekend rotation. He's their best left-handed arm. Well, he's on UCL. He's on the shelf for the year. And so Riley Cooper's the only lefty that they've had all year. So what they've had to do is mix and match stylistically, like you mentioned, Raiselman. So they can go, or Gervais. So let's say Mikhail Hilliard. Mikhail Hilliard's 5'10", 180 pounds, soaking wet, but he throws a big looping breaking ball. Right? He's a curveball pitcher. He's a 12-6 curveball. So they'll go Mikhail, and then they'll bring in Raiselman. So you go from this righty throwing the big looping breaking ball to the righty dotting 98, 99. And then maybe they'll come Cooper from the left side, and then Gervais, who's 6'10", on the mound, he's 7 feet tall, right? He's got this weird arm slot. So they're having to manage it just to keep hitters off balance based on how it might even look at with a release point. It's been They have earned their money, man. Jay Johnson and Jason Kelly, they have earned their paychecks this year by maximizing what they've done with this staff. And you're right. They're sitting here at 10-8, and they're staring at 4 weekends to go, and any of these four really are winnable. And you know, I was surprised, Chris, but I talked to Kendall Rogers from D1 Baseball, and Kendall's opinion was that if LSU gets to 16 wins, including the SEC tournament, that they'll be a regional host.
Yeah.
And I don't think, when league play started and they lost their first two home series to A&M and Auburn, who turned out to be pretty good, but nobody was thinking much of them at the start of the year. I don't think anybody was thinking this team was going to be a regional host, but they're definitely making a push with that as a very real possibility.
I agree with him. They are, 18 in the RPI as of today, 13 strength of schedule. Going to Vandy, even just 1 out of 2, you're treading water there. Georgia has got, a top 5 RPI. So even though that's in Baton Rouge, going to Alabama's top 50 RPI. Ole Miss at home, you better win that or that hurts you a little bit. But I think they're right there. They're 2 games above 500. Back to the pitching and the defense end for a minute. I'm looking at not just ERA but runs allowed, and because frankly LSU's got a defensive issue. We may get into that in just a minute. But even with that, runs allowed per 9 innings, LSU's 4th in league in SEC games. Probably would surprise a lot of people, but this is a conversation I have with SEC fans when they say, well, I don't know about pitching for so-and-so. I'm like, just look around the league, man. They're still, even with the cracks and the warts, they're in better shape than most teams, it appears.
They have delivered in leverage situations. There's some insane stat with this bullpen. I don't know it off the top of my head, so forgive me, but it's a runs inherited against runs allowed is bonkers. This bullpen has been asked to take the ball with runners on base, and time and again they deliver. And that's why that runs allowed number is as low as it is, because their bullpen in leverage situations has delivered. LSU was when they were on the road in Florida, in Gainesville, Eric Razelman inherited a bases-loaded situation with nobody out and did not allow a run. He went strikeout, ground ball with the infield playing in, got the ground ball, got the out at home, and then strikeout. That's why that number is what it is. When they've needed dudes to take the ball and make a pitch more often than not this year, they've made that pitch. Now, you alluded to defense, and that is their bugaboo.
Yeah.
It is. You want to look at any game LSU loses, look at the E column, look at the pass balls, and it's peppered. I mean, it is as bad a defensive team as LSU has had statistically since Paul Maneri's first year in 2007. It is just really hard to explain how bad they have been on defense at times this year.
It seems like it's gotten a little better. I know they've made a couple of switches, and again, this. With the hitting, it doesn't have to be an outstanding team, but has it gotten better? I remember watching them out in Houston, and it was a train wreck. I think they made 10 errors on the weekend. Seems to me like they've improved a little bit. I don't think they're going to be top half of the league, but I think it's gotten a little better, right?
So they've made a couple of changes, and look, Jay has tried everything.
Yeah,
I mean, he's tried everything. But Jacob Berry. I mean, let's go position by position with where the issues are. Jacob Berry is a guy who he's going to be a top 10 pick in this year's draft because he's a switch hitter who can hit with power to all fields from both sides of the plate. But I had one scout tell me there's no player in this draft happier about the universal DH than Jacob Berry because at the next level he is DH first base. That's what he is. Stand on the base, catch the ball, and slug homers. That's what he's going to do. But he played third at Arizona last year, but they tried to hide him in right field. And it was just every day it was a circus out there. So they've settled Berry in at third, where he's not great, but he's more comfortable. And they put a freshman named Josh Pearson in right. And Pearson plays a very solid right field, and he can slug the baseball. He's actually batting leadoff now. And he's a guy who can – Jay's often said he wants someone in the leadoff spot that can make you pay if you miss your spot. That's why he's let off Dylan Cruz at times. But Pearson's that guy. So Pearson solidified right field. Gavin Dugas had a hand injury. Remember, Gavin Dugas led the SEC in RBI last year. but a hand injury that's opened the door for Josh Stevenson, who's a freshman. I remember Andrew Stevenson
Yeah,
from
big lanky
LSU.
center fielder with the Nationals.
Yeah, he's now with the Nationals with the big club. Got a World Series ring a couple years ago. It's his younger brother. He's a freshman. He has a big league approach at the plate and really is a very, very polished outfielder. I'd say as a freshman, he's a better player as a freshman than Andrew was. I'm not saying he's a better prospect. I mean, Andrew's obviously in Major League Baseball right now, but he's better as a freshman than his brother was. So they've solved the outfield, and really it's the left side of the infield and catcher that's an issue. Alex Milazzo is a dominant defensive catcher. He's got world-class pop time. He controls the run game, but he's been on the shelf for more than half this season with a knee injury. So the two guys that they've circled in there, Tyler McManus and Hayden Travinski, I mean, it's similar behind the plate right now to what it was like early in the season with Barry and Wright. I mean, they've had strike three called where they just drop the baseball. It's you don't see it at this level. And then the left side of the infield with Barry at third, with Jordan Thompson at short. And Chris, the really weird thing about Jordan Thompson is last year as a freshman, he was pretty solid. You know, you looked at Thompson at short. He's got the best arm on the team and really good range, and you thought, oh man, he can be next in a line of really good shortstops at LSU. And I think it's not physical, man. It's just between his ears right now. Against Missouri in Game 3 this last weekend, the bases were loaded in the 8th inning, and LSU was trying to protect the lead, and Paul Gervais got a rolling ground ball to shortstop. I mean, a tailor-made, as easy a double play ball as you will ever get. And Thompson booted it. Just didn't come up with the baseball. When they play solid defense, I think they can beat anybody in the league.
Yeah.
But that's a giant because it has been something to behold this year, man, and it's just really hard to explain.
You know, the other thing, and by the way, the catching thing, I'm looking at Travinski and McManus put together. They've hit 11 home runs in the SEC. I mean, that's an all-SEC catching duo just with passable defense. But Gavin Dugas, I think, has had a hand issue. Last I checked, I think he's still out. Is that correct?
Yeah, he was in the starting lineup Friday against Missouri. He was scheduled to be, let me say that, in the starting lineup, and then he was scratched.
Yeah.
He has had a pinch hit AB, but they said it's not broken. There's no ligament damage. Right now it's a pain tolerance thing, whatever caused it. But a few weeks back, he made a kind of a diving catch against the wall in foul territory, and I think that's when it aggravated. And so they're kind of just bringing him along until they feel like he can contribute again.
I mean, the lineup, everybody knows if you follow college baseball. I mean, I looked at the top four with him and Barry and Cruz and Doty, and I just said that's about as good of a foursome as you'll ever see. You've talked about the depth. Braden Jobert's been good, but there's still, in my mind, I'm not dogging the kids here, but Cruz can probably hit a little bit better, and Morgan can too. And I think that's the thing, Matt, when I look at LSU, I'm just like, the pitching's solid. The hitting's been great, but it can get better. They can get healthier. I just look at them. I think this is a dangerous team with a notch beyond what they've shown.
Yeah, and Trey Morgan it was weird. I believe it was the Auburn series. Maybe it was Arkansas. They're running together a little bit. It's been a while, but on literally the first AB of the weekend, he was trying to leg out an infield grounder, and he lunged for the base and kind of jammed his foot into the base and twisted his knee. And so he's been dealing with a PCL for half the SEC season. If you watch him play, he wears a brace under his pants. So that's definitely affected his ability to move and to run the bases, and maybe affected him a little bit defensively as well, because he's a really good defensive first baseman. But he handles the bat as well as anybody we've seen here in the last 20 years. I mean, he can just flick his wrist and pop one over the shortstop's head and dump one into shallow left. I mean, he just handles the bat very well, like a pro. It's why he's going to be a really good pro. But you're right. Morgan at times has slumped, and Cruz is just striking out too much this year. When he makes contact, he punishes the baseball. And Dylan Cruz next year, he's got a chance to be a 1-1 guy next year.
Mm-hmm.
To hit with power to all fields and to be as dominant a center fielder defensively as he is, he'll be in that. I'm not going to pretend to know what high school pitching prospect will be there in 2023 or whatever. But Cruz, if he could cut down on the strikeouts, could certainly improve. But man, there's no let up in this lineup. And you see that time to time in the league in spots where there's no breather. I mean, you mentioned Gavin Dugas, who led the SEC in RBIs. Of course, he was batting 7th when he got hurt. He's in the bottom third of this order.
Wow.
I mean, you think you get to the bottom 30, then there's Gavin Dugas, there's Stravinsky or McManus, the catchers you mentioned who combined for 11 homers. I mean, they can hurt you. Anywhere in this lineup, they can hurt you.
Which was the opposite of last year. Yeah.
Yeah. Last year was a struggle to find any offense.
Yeah.
But if they catch their stride and, maybe with another arm or two coming along, a guy to keep in mind is Jacob Hasty. He's a lefty who really struggled in the fall and in the preseason, kept working. And here in the last couple of weeks, they've given him the ball and he's delivered. That's another left-handed arm that they think they can trust. So you get a couple of these arms that develop and a couple of those guys as the weather gets warm and the wind's blowing out. LSU's going to be a dangerous out. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I don't think they've got the starting pitching to make any type of serious noise through Omaha or anything. But they're going to be a tough out and can make for some really uncomfortable days for some of the front runners.
Yeah, could be some long Sundays in regionals, I think, with these guys.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, well, with lots of pitching changes both ways. But let's talk about Georgia, which to me has overachieved. I think Georgia's a good team. I liked him in preseason more than most. The lineup is experienced. Cannon is probably the best arm in this league right now that he's healthy. I don't think there's probably a lot of debate. I mean, he and Drew Beam right now, probably 1-2 for pitcher of the year, but I think if Cannon is healthy, he's going to be that guy, especially if Barco is out of the discussion, which, he missed last week and could be out this week too. So I look at them, though, and beyond that, boy, it's been ugly. No, they got a good start from Nolan Crisp last week. They've had some health issues. I think, before we criticize, let's be fair, I don't know that Georgia's had all the pieces with Dylan Ross getting hurt that it thought it would have, but it's kind of been for them. It's kind of been Cannon and hold your breath and flip a coin, and more often than not, it's worked out for them.
It's kind of stunning to see a team with a staff ERA of 7.
Yeah,
I mean,
is a national seed potentially.
Yeah. But it goes to show you, I mean, we all know this, but when you have a guy like Cannon at the front of a weekend, I think when he pitched game 2 last week, if I'm not mistaken, mm-hmm. I think they're expecting him to pitch game 2 of this weekend as well. But when you got a guy like that and you just kind of scribble a W on the schedule, every time he's got the ball, just incredible value. I mean, I think about LSU's weekend against Arkansas where they got swept. And you have that guy and you're able to salvage one. Just think about how different the outlook of this team is at 11-7, and tied with Arkansas for the lead in the West and in that national seed conversation and being 10-8, hoping you're going to scratch it together and find a way to host a regional. So I think for Georgia, I mean, that's their answer, right? I mean, they've been snake bit by injury. I don't think we all know that's been a big storyline in Athens, and I'm not being dismissive of that. I mean, it's legitimate. Everybody deals with it, but some more than others. But if Jonathan Cannon's right, and that's a guy that you feel like you can give him the ball and just scribble a W on the schedule and Sharpie every time you do, it's a huge advantage. And I think LSU's going to have a tough time trying to beat him. But I'll really enjoy watching this LSU lineup. Hopefully on a windy day at the box, see if they can get a few balls in the air against them.
I was checking my email as you were speaking to see if the league had released the pitching matchups for this weekend. I've not seen them yet, but I would assume we'd see Crisp and then Cannon and I mean, it's been ugly for them beyond that. I mean, it's just been A&M put 23 on them in Game 3 2 weeks ago, I believe. So, yeah. I feel like the Dams fixing to burst for them a little bit. But then right about the time they get Cannon back too. So
yeah. I'm trying to think of a comp, Chris, of a year where LSU had the dominant frontline guy and nobody behind him. I mean, really, those years Aaron Nola was here, they followed him up with talent, even if it was like a freshman Jared Poche, in 2014. But that guy can carry you a long way when you got him, man. And I think for LSU this weekend, I'll never say they're going to concede a game ever, but if Cannon pitches game 2, I think LSU with McHale gives them an advantage there. And with the depth they have in their bullpen, they've shown they can piece together a game on a Sunday. And I think that might be their ticket. Try to get off to a good start on Friday. If you somehow manage a way to do what nobody else has done and beat Jonathan Cannon, great. You have a chance to go for a sweep. But I really think the games 1 and 3 are their gettable opportunities where they should be heavily favored. Probably should.
Pitching to them has been no walk in the park either. Ben Anderson's had a good year. And I apologize here. We've got a bad connection, so I hope it's not coming through on your end. But they're not an easy lineup to pitch to. Corey Collins is a masher. Connor Tate's had a great year. And I think Cole Tate is out for the weekend. Did I see that right? Matt, I may have a bad connection here. Can you hear me?
There we are. We're good again.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, we froze for a second. Sorry about that.
Yeah, we talked off podcast for a bit. I believe is Cole Tate has been out. Is he out for this weekend?
I haven't seen an update, but he hasn't played since, I believe, April the 10th.
Okay.
So I haven't seen an update out of Athens for this week, but I'm going to assume that he is, barring anything else we've heard. So, I mean, this guy's played a lot of baseball, right? He's a senior shortstop.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'd rather have him than not, but I haven't heard an update as of now.
Yeah, they've had some injuries. Josh McAllister, who should have been one of the better third basemen in this league, has been banged up a little bit this year. I don't know where that stands right now, but I think his numbers are under what I thought. So you wonder if that's a kid playing through an injury. But still, with some of the kids they've got, with Collins, with Ben Anderson, I mean, that's the thing. I don't think anybody expected Georgia to hit the way it has, and that's really carried them to a lot of wins so far.
And that's probably for this weekend the matchup to watch. It is in this LSU pitching staff kind of keep their thumb on Georgia. And look, and LSU's managed to do that even in some tough spots. I mean, I think about the series on the road against Arkansas. That first game, and Arkansas at the time was struggling a bit at the plate, but that first game, they went up against Connor Nolan, and Nolan hit him through 5 innings, and then LSU's lineup finally broke through, and defense was their undoing, and I think they lost 4. I don't have it. It was either 4-3 or 5 before they lost by a run, and that ended up being their best opportunity to get a game. But this pitching staff has managed to keep LSU in ball games if the offense starts slow, until they can break through. So that is really, for me, I think, where this series swings. It's going to be, can LSU piece together that game 3? Can Mikhail Hilliard get them off to a good start in game 1? Which is so surprising, because Mikhail was a guy, I know we talked about it a bit ago, but he was a guy that, and the other thing is, when you're around for as long as home on you, guys know your coach knows what you're likely to do, what you're going to throw in certain situations. And Mikhail has done a magnificent job in some respect of reinventing himself with that curveball. In both sides of the plate, top and bottom of the zone, he can throw it for a strike, he can bounce it if he needs to. And he gets a lot of swings and misses, which you don't typically think you're going to see from a guy throwing a 75-mile-an-hour breaking ball, and an 86, 88 mile-an-hour fastball. But he's done a really good job of pitching. And if Mikhail can get LSU through the 6th or the 7th and preserve that weekend, the bullpen for the next 2 games. I really like their opportunity to win the series this weekend.
No, the box plays pretty home run friendly, does it not? I mean, sometimes it's hard to tell because LSU's always got hitters, and hitters are just going to hit anywhere, but it seems like it gets out of there pretty easily.
When you get into this time of year, when it gets a little warmer and the wind turns and starts blowing out, it does play homer friendly down the lines, 330 down the lines. But the power alley's at 385 and straightaway center is 405, and you don't see many leave the yard at 405 at the box. But if you're a dead pull hitter, you can yank one over the fence when it gets a little bit warmer and the ball starts flying.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking, LSU's given up 22 home runs in conference play, but it's hit 31. I don't have the home road splits in front of me, but Georgia's hit some long balls too, and I really wonder, will that be the thing other when Cannon's on the mound that we can talk about is who got the 3-run jack when it mattered the most?
Well, LSU had a ton of homers last week. I think they had 6 homers last weekend against Missouri, but they were all solo homers, which I've never seen before. They had that many that were all solos. The thing about Georgia, though, is that park. I mean, I don't know if you know it offhand, but that short porch and right, which is what 3. And I mean, it's for me massively frustrating when LSU has to go there because balls that I don't believe as a hitter you should be rewarded for making a bad swing, but that ballpark does. The old Kentucky Park. I mean, LSU doesn't play every team in the East, obviously, but the old Kentucky Park was like that. Lindsey Nelson is like that at times. Mm-hmm. So I always kind of put a little asterisk next to Georgia's home run numbers because I wonder how many of those are just pop-ups to right field that leave the yard. So I don't know. I can't tell you I've watched every Georgia game to know, but it will be more challenging for Georgia to hit balls out, especially right field this weekend than when they play at home.
Have you ever been to a game in that park at Foley Field?
I've not been to Foley, no.
That is a road trip to make. It is one of the most beautiful settings for baseball you'll see. Just the pine trees, and you got the not the frat house, but whatever in Wright. I haven't been there in a few years. It can be an event. Sometimes there's a little bit of a breeze too, but I think it's a fun venue. Yeah, if I as a sidebar, if I were commissioner of the SEC for a day in baseball, one of the things I would do is I'd make them move the fences back about 10 feet across the board in Knoxville. I'd make them do the same thing in Oxford, and probably the right field porch in Georgia too.
And look, Chris, you're talking to a Yankee fan, so I've seen I've seen the benefit of
Paul O'Neill
power hitters on the left side just yanking balls over a fence, over a short porch. But I don't. I'm actually an oddball. Like, as much as I love baseball, I actually you're gonna hate this, and I've never met anyone that agrees with me on this. I wish they would go to uniform dimensions in outfields. I know that there's a charm to different parks having different, but you're not playing the same game.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about a game that's so heavily reliant on statistics because the sample size is so big, it makes it even harder to make sense of it. Because look at the exact conversation we're having right now.
Yeah.
The short porch, at Foley Field does change strategy in that ballpark. And look, I mean, I'd have the same conversation when TD Ameritrade came about because LSU played there in 2013, and I remember Chris Chinea, LSU was playing UCLA, and I forget the UCLA pitcher, but I mean he topped out at 87, and he served up absolutely pummeled left center, and the pitcher is essentially rewarded for making a bad pitch. So I don't know. Again, that's a weird tangent. I've never had anyone ever agree with me on it, but I'm like, what if in basketball some people decided to go to like an 11-foot goal? Like, we're gonna have an 11-foot goal in our gym. So anyway, I know it's stupid, but we're gonna have a 20-yard end zone at Tiger Stadium this year. I mean,
Yeah.
of course it changes the game.
I don't think that's totally crazy. Now, I think you'd have to adjust for altitude, and I mean, you could have an independent commission review it or something, and because you would, like, you couldn't do that in Colorado, or everything would get out of Colorado. It'd be worse than it is. But I get what you're saying. Here's where we connect the dots. We'll just bring humidors to the SEC, right? Everybody would love that. Speaking of your Yankees, Rizzo hit 3 in a game, I think, 2 nights ago, and I think that the average home run distance was like 360 something. So,
hey man,
yeah,
pop-ups leave the yard. There it goes.
yeah. Lefties in New York.
You're talking to a guy whose team has been the beneficiary
Yeah.
of many of those. So I fully understand what I'm saying here. But anyway, by the way, and I know it'll never happen. So
Yeah.
It's moot. But anyway,
I can respect that. Any parting thoughts? Anything we didn't get to on the series that we need to touch on before we end the show today?
The only thing that's interesting has been LSU's struggles at home in league play. They swept Missouri this past weekend, but they opened up against A&M and lost 2 out of 3, and they lost 2 out of 3 at home against Auburn as well. So when they swept Missouri last weekend, which was not an easy task, by the way. Missouri's pesky. Their record's not very good, but they're pesky. That was the first home series in conference play LSU's won this year. So they've actually fared better on the road. I mean, they went down to Gainesville and took 2 out of 3. I'm just, it's a little surprising that historically the box has chewed up opponents, because a lot of times, even in the SEC, I mean, you'll see it where a lot of other teams in the league have caught up with the size of the park and everything, but most of these guys aren't used to playing in front of 10, 11,000 people every single game. And so the box historically chewed up a lot of people who weren't used to handling that pressure, that intensity. And it's kind of been a little bit of a reverse this year, where I think some of these LSU guys, some transfers, some young guys, just haven't handled it great at times. So I'm curious to see if that home field advantage, which has been such an advantage for LSU for decades, can sort of maybe reestablish here into May and hopefully into June.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was watching the Saturday game against Missouri. I saw a whole lot more empty seats than I expected, and I want to say that was the case on Friday too. What's going on there?
So they played Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Okay.
Saturday, it was tough because it overlapped with the LSU football spring game. So that's why, and obviously the opponent as well, with Missouri not being very good. I'd expect much better crowds this weekend. Saturday, to kind of bring it back where we started, Saturday is going to be bonkers. You got LSU softball playing at 11. Baseball's playing Georgia at 2. You got a pre-Garth Brooks concert from 2 to 5 at walk-ons near campus, and then Garth Brooks is at 7. I mean, there should be a full house on Saturday for LSU Georgia. Now, that Sunday wake-up's going to be tough for a lot of people after the Garth Brooks concert on Saturday, because it feels like the whole city's going to it. But I think you'll have better crowds this weekend. But last weekend was a bit of an outlier just because of the spring game pulling from the attendance, because they overlapped.
Good weekend for Uber drivers down there.
It's oddly, again, where we talked about earlier, where you had options in Nashville.
Is that not an option?
To get an Uber in Nashville than it is about. Oh, it's an option, but you have to wait 30, 45 minutes before someone can come to you. It ain't like you step on a Broadway and tap the app and someone's there in a minute, right?
Yeah.
So it's just different, same conference, different realities, different vibes.
Well, Matt, it's been a ton of fun. On your way out, tell folks about your show. You're all over that state. You're one of the most respected guys down there. Tell folks where they can catch you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, I always say if you can spell my name, you can find me. There's a lot of vowels, Moscona, but Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, I'm on all the social platforms. And then the show is syndicated throughout the state, but our home base is here in Baton Rouge at 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. So 104.5ESPN.com, or you can watch us weekday afternoons at the Watch 104.5 ESPN YouTube channel.
It's been fun. Hopefully we'll catch up with you for postseason baseball. Should be a ton of fun when we get there.
I'm always looking forward to it. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Matt. Remember, hit that subscribe button on our channel if you haven't, and we'll see you again soon.